everyone, glad you could make it. My name is Anna Stashkina and welcome to this week's tutorial. We are going to talk about stone texture, bas relief and creating rough stone on fondant and your cakes. Here's my piece from the last week tutorial, and this is the fondant texture I used, and we are going to create a little bit more texture and bas relief on top of this piece. To do that, I will use my pieces from the beginning, like from the time when I created this. And if you are, because I want this stone texture, like bas relief, melts in together with the basic fondant and the texture I have here. That's why I'm using my pieces that are colored and made the same way as my main piece. If you remember, if you didn't see the last week's tutorial, I'll post it in a link below, but it is the same fondant, it is the same texture I made. So this is white fondant, and I'll let it sit out for a few minutes before this tutorial to let it dry. I want it to be crumbly, and I want it to be a little bit like when you're working with a cake and you're trying to cover your cake with fondant, you would hate this texture. So that's what I'm going for. And to make bas relief, I use this particular mold. This mold is flower set number 1 by First Impression molds, but you can use any texture, any molds if you want, like to add animals to your cake. I know a lot of wedding and like brides, they want to add like small tiny animals on the back of their cake as a symbol or like family special thing. But for this week's tutorial, I'm going to use this. My suggestion is always use something that's first of all made to use with fondant and food grade and safe to use with food. And second one is something that is really soft. As you can see, this mold is really soft and really pliable. It will make our life much easier. So first thing I need to do is I need to prep my mold, because even I'm working with fondant and I want it to be crumbly and I want it to be dry, I still don't want to use any Crisco or any Trex. I want this to stay dry, but I want this fondant not to stick to my mold and not to be stuck inside this mold. So to do that, I'm just using a fluffy brush. This is just regular makeup brush. I just love to use it for fondant. And I use a little bit of cornstarch, but I'm not putting cornstarch inside my mold, because then it will cover all the small parts and all the little nooks we need. So I use a little bit on my brush, if you're familiar, same as you do in your makeup, and then just brushing inside the mold, but just a little bit, just tiny bit, to cover with cornstarch, but not drench in cornstarch. Clean my mold so you can see just a tiny amount of fondant. Next, I need my board. I know I worked with this mold a lot, and I know that it makes like tiny flower details very nice on your cakes, especially for wedding season or for something like fancy and elegant. But I want this design to cover some of the interesting parts and like flow with my design on the board or on a cake if you're working on a cake. And that's what I wanted to do. So I see a pattern going here, like the place where my fondant met, and I see this part might be interesting to the design. What I'm going to do next is I take a small piece. I'm not going to mush it together or like change the texture. I'm just trying to bring it to life a little bit and make it pliable, but just a little bit. Then I'm going to put it inside my mold, and I press relatively hard to do the impression. I'm not trying to fill my mold exactly to the end. Even for me, this is a little bit too much, but you can see that this is flush, but it's still a little bit too much, because full mold will give me more like thicker design, and I don't want my design to be as thick as the mold. So I'm going to take out just a little bit, and I press until I can feel that my fondant inside this mold is relatively thin and spread through the design. And as you can see, that's like a little bit of divot. So this mold is half full. To take it out, I'm just turning it upside down, and I'll leave it somewhere here just to see if I like it. Then I'll take even smaller pieces from the same fondant mixture, so it's not completely mixed in, so it looks like it's marbled or it is made out of stone again. But with even smaller piece, it is going to be much thinner. Do you see the difference? So like the mold, the first piece is much thicker, and this is the thin one. So I'll make a few more. A little bit of cornstarch on a brush. Maybe I'll find some pieces in a lighter color. Again, just bring it to life, make it soft and pliable, but not mixed in completely. So I'm not trying to do one color, I'm still trying to maintain a little bit of marble, stone, and differences in color. Okay, I'll go with this one. And because this fondant is relatively dry, I'm trying to push it in really hard to get the impression. And I'm not looking to make it perfect or to fill the whole mold. I'm just trying to make and prepare a few pieces for me to work and add to this board. When I'm making my, like prepping my fondant to go into this mold, I'm still trying to keep it thin even before I start and I place it inside. And then I'm trying to spread it all over the mold. And make it thin, but get all the impressions. I think I might need a few interesting pieces. My favorite part to do is to roll it in a sausage, like this shape, and press into a few flowers in the mold. And then you'll get a piece like this. So this part is done. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with my pieces and see where and how I can use them. So I like this piece the most because all the details you can see, it stands out and it's thin but interesting. What I'm going to do is use a Dresden tool or any tool you're comfortable with and just pull sides and edges just a little bit. Not all around, but some places. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling these edges to make it thinner. So it is petal thin. Just tiny bit. And then to add it on a board, what I'm going to do is use a little bit of water, just a touch. This is just water, nothing else. But just a touch. Because we want it to be sticky, but not wet. And I'm going to place it somewhere right here. And using my Dresden tool, again, just mix and blend these edges together. See, it just melts in. And do this all around. To make it look like it is a one piece. You can add texture, you can even add some of your crumbles from your fondant, so the same as you used for your fondant, like I have here. You can add a little bit of those to mix it in together, or you can just leave it like this and do the rest at the end to see. So here's another piece I wanted to add, and I like it, but I would prefer it to be a little bit smaller. So I'll cut it around the flower. Again, use my Dresden tool to thin out all the edges, not all, but some of them, to make it blend easier. A little bit of water. And on my board. Mix it in. And make sure it sticks. Again. If you want to keep some details or some edges thicker, that's totally fine. Just look at your design and see how it goes. And usually if I'm looking at my board or at my cake, I see places that are not so interesting compared to these parts. For example, there is a lot of texture, so I'll place it somewhere here, maybe on the corner. Blend it in. And then I'll put one piece here to connect these parts, because as you can see, it looks like... Oh, hello! Yeah, absolutely! Let me know if you have any questions. I'm trying to explain step by step, but sometimes it's not that easy. So I wanted to connect these pieces, but I see that this flower is a little bit too big. I'll cut it. Because my fondant is too dry, I can cut using scissors, but if your fondant is fresh, just use a knife or something that you're comfortable with. I'll make my edges thinner to easier connect pieces. And when I'm doing this, I'm not trying to destroy all the edges and all the pieces. I'm trying to go inside flowers or between flower and the petal and make it thin. Like, I'm not going straight on the petal, I'm going in between and trying to pull thin layers of fondant that would help me blend these pieces together. Touch of water. And if you fondant soft and you feel that you don't need any water, just stick it in. It's not mandatory, just because my fondant been sitting around and it's dry, I find it easier to add a little bit of water. And when you're blending in, just pull your thinner parts of fondant on top and blend it in together, just layering one by one. And next step, I'll probably add one piece here to have a floor. Just a touch of water. And you can use this technique and you can use the same method if you have some imperfections on your cake and you wanted to cover it up. You can do the same, because if you're using the same fondant mixture, it will look cohesive and it will look interesting, and nobody will know what's underneath that. And if you want to mold or add texture on top of that, just use your Dresden tool or any tool you're comfortable with and just pull it on top and mix it in together. And as you can see, that's the final result. That's how I make it, and that's how I prefer to do a bas relief on a cake. And thank you so much for watching this week's tutorial. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and share this video. It helps a lot to grow this channel and gives me more time to create tutorials like this. See you next time. Bye!